hot word today is sustainability, of course. And I think to myself, how long has agriculture been around? Maybe back to Adam and Eve? I'm not sure, but it would seem to me that we already have a hook on sustainability. And not only do we have a hook on it, but we have improved ourselves and we are producing more. We're doing it with better methods. We're saving the soil. We're great stewards of the land, and I think we already have the right sustainability model.
Congressman Bill Flores, thank you for joining us today.
Glad to be with you.
You represent the 17th District of Texas. Can you tell us a little bit about that district and the role agriculture plays in it?
Well, it's a great district to represent. It starts up just south of Fort Worth, Texas, and runs almost to a point 50 miles northwest of Houston. The largest activities in the district are predominantly agriculture, also oil and gas in the northern part of the district, as well as higher education with both Baylor and Texas A&M is two of the key parts of my district. Agriculture is hugely important. It's a big component of our economy. We have diverse operations from livestock to crops. It's very important to me. It's very important to the members in my part of Texas.
What are some of the biggest issues you hear from your constituents involved in agriculture?
Well, last year the biggest problem we had was the drought, as you're well aware, and so now the farmers and agricultural producers in my part of the state are worried about trying to recover from the drought. Everybody is on pins and needles regarding what the ultimate farm bill is going to look like this year. And they're also concerned about two other things too, the regulatory environment and the high cost of energy.
Can you tell us a little bit about the National Ocean Policy? I know you've been outspoken about that before.
Sure. The National Ocean Policy arose out of an executive order. It's number 13547 that the President signed in 2009. And basically what it says is that several agencies of the federal government will get together and put together a set of rules to essentially zone the oceans. What's troubling about this is that the rule is very expansive in the way it's written. It says that it can cover not only coastal and marine zone spatial planning, it can move into the Great Lakes and to the sources thereof, which means theoretically if you have a raindrop that falls on a piece of farmland in Bosque County, Texas, in my district, since that drop of rain ultimately flows into the ocean, that farmer's land could be regulated by a bunch of unelected, unaccountable bureaucrats here in Washington. And that, I don't know about you, but that scares me, to put a bunch of bureaucrats in charge of trying to take care of what we do in our own district.
How does that concern some of the other regulatory concerns and farm bill concerns influence your legislative goals for the remainder of this term?
Well, first of all, what we're going to try to do is we're going to try to make sure we put in not only authorize new legislation to deauthorize the President's attempts to pass this ocean zoning policy on to the American people. Let me give you a little background on that before we get too much further. For 8 years before 2011, Congress debated having an ocean zoning policy, and they elected to do nothing. So the intent of Congress is for the federal government to stay away from trying to zone the oceans. The President has taken upon himself, at the behest of some environmental groups, to go ahead and do that on his own. So we need to try to stop that. If you want to think on a macro basis for a minute before we get into the rest of the regulatory process, what makes a country strong is its ability to produce its own food, to produce its own fiber, and to produce its own fuel. And we need to think about looking at every law we pass, every regulation we write, in such a way to promote those activities and not to hinder those activities. But when you put Washington regulators or unelected, unaccountable bureaucrats in charge of looking at those issues, they have no real world experience like I do, as someone who grew up with agriculture in my DNA. So in terms of what I propose to do legislatively is try to reset the regulatory environment so that It's grounded in real-world economics based on real-world studies of the impact of what the rules do on agriculture and the impact that it could have on food prices, clothing prices, and energy prices in this country.
Getting to the budget, you're part of the budget committee.
Yes, ma'am.
And you helped pass the budget resolution proposed by Representative Ryan. What are you going to look for from the committees designated as reconciliation committees, particularly the House Ag Committee?
Okay. Well, for fiscal 13, we've asked the appropriate committees to go find $78 billion in cuts for us, so that we can replace the sequester with something that matches what the federal government needs to be doing in terms of defending itself and also meeting its budget goals. The Agriculture Committee, we tasked with finding $33 billion in cuts. Now, we didn't do this out of the blue as the Budget Committee. We worked with our leadership, and we worked with the other relevant committees, Ag, Ways and Means, Energy and Commerce, Judiciary, and so on down the line. And so when we wrote the budget, we had assumed that they would probably take part of that from SNAP or food stamps, and also take part of it from crop support programs. We have specifically tried to protect the ag risk management programs that we have. I mean, we've got to understand agriculture is a unique industry with unique risks, predominantly because of the weather that we have no control over. And so we need to maintain the ag risk management tools, which are generally not available in the private market. The Ag Committee, but we gave the committees authority to do it the way they thought best. And the Ag Committee elected to pull most of it from the SNAP program. I'm fine with that, because I believe that we need to look at giving families paychecks instead of trying to give them food stamps.
My last question will be, do you feel that some of your overall goals for your first term are being accomplished?
I would say not exactly. When Americans put this class of 89 conservative freshmen in Congress last year, they thought that we would come up and then we would fix everything immediately. We'd stop the damage and then repair what had happened to America over the prior 2 years. We felt the same way. We as 89 freshmen thought we'd come up and we'd get that done. The practical fact of the matter is, though, without the Senate and without support from the White House, it's pretty hard to do that. We put the shovels down. We've stopped digging the hole any deeper for the American taxpayer and for future generations. Because if Americans will think about what happened in the 2 years before they put us in here, you had cap and trade pass the House, you had Obamacare signed into law, you had Dodd-Frank signed into law, you had spending just explode. We've stopped that. There's been no more attempts at cap and trade, no more Obamacares, no more Dodd-Franks. But we haven't been able to repair the damage from that, because the repair legislation that we've proposed and passed, it doesn't go past the House. The Senate doesn't look at it. And as a result, and the President has already threatened to veto a lot of it, so as a result, we have not been able to fix things as well as we'd like to. So, but that said, I think I look back, and I think we've been successful, at least in saying we've stopped the bleeding as bad as it was before, but we've sure got to get the patient out of the emergency room, and hopefully, depending on what the voters want to do this coming November, we'll be able to do that.
Congressman Bill Flores, thank you for joining us.
Glad to be with you today.